Welcome to the Startup Grind.
To the floor. So today we have Thomas, who actually flew in like a couple of hours ago from Jakarta to be with us tonight to speak about his experience as a founder. So Thomas is currently at Salesstock, a very, very big e-commerce company in Indonesia, and he was previously at Yahoo, Apple, Spuul, and he has also been in mobile payments and now in e-commerce. So Thomas, welcome. Firstly, tell us a bit about your background. How did you end up where you are now?
Okay. So a few of my ex-colleagues are here. So I started off at Yahoo. So I ventured into tech mostly by going into Yahoo first, and then I was doing a bit of product over there. I was in global tech initiative. We were working on some global projects. Yahoo Messenger. I think you still remember probably. So we were working on Yahoo Messenger, some aerial project. We were trying to basically we were changing Yahoo Messenger as it is, as it was, into something that Line is like today. So basically.
When was this?
Maybe 2011. Yeah, probably. Yeah. So we were doing that over there, and then I don't know how many of you guys know what happened to Yahoo back then. So it was a pretty bad period at that point in time. So Karabas was fired, right? Scott Thompson came in, fired after a while because he falsified his resume, right? So I mean that was during that period, right? I was there during that period, and it was pretty bad. So the product did, on hindsight, Yahoo should have become what Line is today, but on hindsight that didn't happen, right? Because of all the restructuring that happened. So after Yahoo, I went to Apple, where I was doing a bit more of a business process improvement, automation. I was trying to look at, I was looking at how each division's function and how to automate the whole process. Some processes can be automated with scripts. Some processes can be automated with certain business improvements. For example, less communication from one team to the other and direct communication, things like that. Right. So, yeah.
How was experience transitioning from like more product management in Yahoo down to business process automation?
So product management, I started off at Yahoo. So I wasn't going in like as a big ass product manager or anything. So I was going in as a very entry level, basically kind of doing everything. You kind of have to learn how each division function, right? I mean, it's a very cross-divisional role, right? I kind of have to talk to legal in Sunnyvale, I have to talk to product people in Bangalore, engineers in Bangalore. So a lot of that. So I think that helped me with what I was doing at Apple as well. So when I was going to Apple, I didn't manage anybody, right? So it was mostly but I had a lot of I need to manage a lot of stakeholders, right? Because when you're trying to do something that essentially makes certain people redundant, and you have to move their roles from this team to the other because this team no longer exists. You automate certain things. There's a lot of stakeholder management. You have to kind of convince them that that's fine. You have to make sure that they don't feel bad about it. You have to talk to the management team and make sure that. I kind of rewind a little bit. Apple is a very conservative company, right? From the outside, they look like they're innovating a lot. From the operation side, they are very, very conservative. If anything is not broken at all, they don't want anybody touching it at all. Right? So they're just going to scale the team. They're going to add more team members just so that it works the way it is. Right? To come in and say, okay, look, this division, 6 people, it's not required. You can move them. We have a resource constraint over here. You should move them over here. Right? Over here, you can automate it this way. You can do this script, whatever. That takes a lot of, you kind of have to convince a lot of parties. You have to convince the management. You have to make sure that the management is fine with it, right? And then you have to kind of explain the plans, the iterative plan. We're going to do this first. If it works, we're going to do this, right? To make sure that they're not feeling like you're going to blow up the whole plan. Right? You're going to blow up the whole operations team. So I think the experience that I got from Yahoo helped a lot in Apple when it comes to stakeholder management.
And then after Apple, what did you move on to?
So after Apple, I went and joined my ex-boss at Yahoo, so at Spuul. So at Spuul, I was doing more of a growth role, growth and data.
Do you guys know what Spuul does? Yeah? A couple of Indians in the room?
Yeah. So I went to Spuul, I was doing more of a growth role. I was doing both, right? Data and growth, but in a very, very early stage of the company, you don't really have much data. Obviously, you want to track the right amount of data. You have to put it on tracking stacks available, communicate with the engineers and stuff like that. But most of my time was spent on growth. Right? So didn't remember. So back then, mobile marketing was just kind of starting. I mean, Facebook just kind of figured out their mobile monetization. Google was still doing, just AdWords. I don't know. At that point in time, there was a lot of avenues for you to take advantage of because most people don't know how to advertise on mobile yet. Right? So that kind of helped us accelerate our growth a lot. Right? So we grew from about, when I was in, about maybe 60,000 people to about 1 million users in less than a year. Right? Mostly by taking advantage of mobile. Right? Also because of our customer segment as well. When I was working with Spuul, it was mostly, majority of customers was, of course, they were in India, and people most of the time, their first computer is the phone, right? So mobile is very important over there. So I did a lot of work in growth, and of course a bit of data as well, trying to figure out, how to optimize certain content, venture a bit into revenue system, things like that.
Cool. But you mentioned that the things you did at Spuul were, it was a place where you learned a lot about growth of data, but it wasn't a very exciting place to be.
Yeah.
And why is that?
So it was more of so there weren't a lot of big moves, right? I mean, if you're working in a company where there's a lot of big moves, you're always constantly pushing the boundary, right? You're always at the edge, right? It's very eventful because you remember everything that happened. There's always adrenaline pumping. At Spuul, it was more of an execution. You execute one, and then you learn a little bit from it, and then you execute a little bit, and then you learn a little bit from it. It's just very iterative.
Predictable?
Yeah.
In some way. Okay, great. And you mentioned that you took some time off after in the Bay Area. What was your take on that shift, and what did you learn from that experience?
So I spent 3 to 4 months in the Bay Area. I was helping out a friend to set up he had a startup over there. I was trying to set up the operations for him over there as well. But most of my time was more to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I think in the Bay Area, you get a sense of optimism that everything is possible, and you can kind of, no matter how dumb an idea is, you can kind of work on it. Right? And someday it's going to be something really big. Someday it's going to be something really great. And sometimes that happens, right? And in the Bay Area, people tend to think, they tend to think bigger, right? Over there, it helped me a lot to kind of come out of. So I've been living in Singapore for some time back then, and then I moved to the States for a while. That helped me to move my shift, right? I mean, I kind of come out from the thinking that life has to be of a certain way, that you have to do this, you have to do that. It frees out, it allows me to explore what I wanted to do next. That helped a lot, right, in what was to come. Yeah.
And then after spending some time in the US, you mentioned that you were networking with a couple of Indonesian entrepreneurs over there, and that was what led you to the next move, which is to shift countries, right?
Yeah.
And how was that transition like? How did you manage to find those people in the Bay Area? And what was the winning factor about that particular market in Indonesia?
So a lot of people have very shiny stories. They say, okay, this is how I actually meet up with these people. And there's a sequence of event. My sequence of event is mostly kind of luck. So I kind of went to the States. I just wanted to lay back for a while. Right? I happened to leave thanks to a friend of mine who was back then. So he introduced me to a friend, an Indonesian friend in the Bay Area, when I lived in the house for the next couple of months, right? So that's kind of how it led, one thing led to the other. So I was living with a bunch of Indonesians, 6, 7 Indonesians in the same house. They were all engineers in Facebook, Google, Sony, right? So I was kind of living with them, while I was exploring what I wanted to do. And then the Indonesian community in the States is really strong, right? I mean, I think Indonesians have also a sense of pride. Wherever they are in the world, they're always together, right? So I was hanging out with a lot of people like that, and there were a couple of networking events, and I went there as well. So I was talking to some of the entrepreneurs who went there, sort of just to figure out how the valley is like, and after a bunch of conversation with them, it was a much better. I think Indonesia is a much better country in terms of opportunity than Singapore, right? So nothing actually happened after that, right? And then I came back, and then I was still kind of talking to them, and they were asking me to go to Indonesia. And then I came to Singapore, came back to Singapore, I was deciding whether I should stay in Singapore or go to Indonesia. And then I remember how boring it was in Singapore. And because, you know, when I came back, I was very optimistic. I felt very optimistic about the world. Right? Once I land in Singapore, I just figure out that, you know, what are the opportunities? What can I do? Right? What can I contribute? And it doesn't seem like very much, right? Because it's all this pressure from around you in Singapore. So that's when I kind of decided, okay, I should go to Indonesia.
Yeah. So let's talk about your experience in Indonesia. So currently you're managing a big team at Salesstock. In a technical environment, what is the biggest challenge so far in building a team?
Okay, it's mostly more of a catch-22. Right? A really, really strong engineer wants to work with other really, really strong engineers. Right? So the trickiest part is actually the initial phase, which is how do you set up a team of very, very good engineers. That at the same time, you don't want engineers who are mercenaries, you know, where they come in because you pay them the most, right? You're not building a very good culture over there. So it took us some time to find people who are, one, very, very good, and two, believe in what we're doing, and actually have their sight on the same place as us, right? I mean, when we were convincing them, we were saying this is our goal, and this is what we're trying to do, they actually agree with us, and they are excited about it as well, right? That took some time to find. And it was a very conscious decision as well for us to find that. Because once we have that and they come in, the next step is kind of easy. Because all we have to do, if the next candidate is not convinced that we're good enough, is just to have a trial period. You work with them temporarily, and the result will kind of speak for itself.
And what's the engineering structure like at Salesstock?
Engineering, so we have two very large, very engineering-driven teams. So one is tech team, and the other one is data. So data team engineering is separated from tech because we want that autonomy. Right? If we are relying on tech, data projects will always be lower priority because at early stage startup, most of the time, data projects doesn't hit the bottom line immediately. So we have a very separate team. So the data team will have its own team, tech team will have its own team. So for data team, it's flat. So the way we structure it is business intelligence, one team, data infrastructure, and data science. For us, it's very important to have that clear distinction. Right? A lot of data science people, data scientists, they come in, they want to build models. You know, a lot of companies they say we're hiring for data scientists. Data scientist comes in. Here, I want you to start tracking this. I want you to build our Hadoop cluster. You know, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all, right? That's not their expertise. That's not their interest. So for us, we have a very clear distinction. Data infrastructure, you know, they're basically managing engineers within the data team, and they're doing all the data infrastructure work. Business intelligence is where we do reporting, business analysis, and figure out what we need to do next, and data science, of course, machine learning, AI, things like that.
Yep, and when you're hiring within your team itself, what are some common traits that you look for?
Common traits in any one of the subdivisions. Okay. So for business intelligence, what we're looking for primarily are people who are analytical. I mean, this is sort of like a hygiene check, right? They have to be analytical to be business intelligence. Of course, it will help if they're very good at SQL. Of course, but SQL can be trained. That's not a problem. What is most important about business intelligence is that they, how do I put it? They have to be very resilient. Because in business intelligence division, anytime they make any analysis, they are saying that they are indirectly saying that somebody is doing a good job and somebody is not doing a good job, right? Their analysis will always be challenged. Somebody will always come and say, your analysis is wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. They have to be very resilient to say, okay, this is what the data says. This is my methodology, this is what the data says, you know, and they shouldn't take things personally. That's one of the major traits for business intelligence. If not, they will take things personally and they'll end up, you know, feeling really bad and they create, you know, and they'll not grow from there. They become very defensive subsequently. So that's business intelligence. For data infrastructure, we're mostly looking for people who can learn very fast. Because the whole data infrastructure world changes so much, right? There's no fixed way of doing things. You can go to one company who is very data-driven and they will do things this way, another. It depends on their use. So we're mostly looking for engineers who can learn really, really fast. And for data science, we're looking for people who are good at research. They can read research papers and they are fine. I mean, they can understand the whole research paper and they can implement it. Yeah.
And at Salesstock, what's diversity like in terms of engineers?
Diversity, like
Mainly Indonesians or a couple of internationals? I mean, as we know in Singapore, there's a hiring problem within engineering itself. Yeah.
So for us, majority are Indonesians. There are of course other nationals as well, but majority will be Indonesians. But they are not Indonesians within Indonesia. They are Indonesians kind of all around the world. Especially, for example, in my team, in the other team, we have engineers located in probably 6, 7, or 8 locations. It's kind of everywhere, right? So we don't really mind where they are. Some of them, they've gone to Germany. Some of them they're in Singapore. Totally fine. Yeah.
Great. So on e-commerce then, let's talk about emerging trends and challenges that you foresee in the next 12 months.
Trends and challenges.
Yeah. Let's go to the extreme.
So challenges-wise, I think everybody in Indonesia, especially if you're in tech, you face the same problem, which is how do you reach out to people in the more rural area, right? When people talk about Indonesia, they always say, okay, it's 250 million people, there's a lot of people. But it's not as easy to reach everyone as in Singapore, right? So how do you reach out to them? And especially in e-commerce, you're dealing with selling of items, and you have to actually deliver the item to them. That becomes a huge challenge on them. So, yeah, it's yet to be seen how we can solve that problem.
Logistics startups.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we see that problem here as well at Singapore, but Foodpanda still takes 45 minutes to deliver a meal at least.
Yeah. In Indonesia, it's worse. So, yeah, it's.
Do you want to talk about the thousands of orders that you guys didn't manage to fulfill?
It's not thousands.
Oh.
Yeah, so we are not that bad. Yeah, so we didn't manage to fulfill a lot of orders. So there was one period where we didn't, so we have a sister company that helps us on logistics. There was one period where we couldn't deliver a lot of the items in the agreed time to our customers, and I don't know if the behavior is similar to Singapore. The customers complain in every single social media channel, right? Every single one of it. They go to Line, they go to Facebook, they just ramble on and on, right? And of course, we don't want that to happen, and there's no way for us to solve it immediately. It's not like a tech bug. It's not like a bug on a website that you can fix and you can deploy. You can put a hotfix in and you can deploy. For things like that, so we have to kind of go into our logistic partners, and we kind of have to talk to them and figure out what's wrong. We have to analyze the whole thing, help them, even try to help them solve it as well. While at the same time, we have to kind of allay the concerns of our customers. So, yeah, a bunch of us actually went down to our customer's house individually to deliver the item ourselves and apologize to them while doing that. Yeah. So these are the challenges that most e-commerce will definitely face, which is very inconsistent logistic partners, very inconsistent. Yeah.
And in terms of emerging trends?
Emerging trends.
Because you guys, your customer segment is the middle class, right? Yeah, can you elaborate more on selling to them? Like, how has that been, and what do you see as trends within that market segment?
Okay, so it's more of middle to low, right? So these people, a lot of our customers have never ever bought anything online. So the first time they buy is actually on Salesstock. What we have noticed is that there's a lot of education that is necessary to these people. They don't even, in their mind, they don't even think that it's possible to buy something online, right? Until your ad shows up, they click to your site and they're like, oh, there's all these products. And then you try to figure out, then your chat pops up and you start talking to them. And they will actually tell you, oh, they take a screenshot of, they are on their mobile phone, on your website, they take a screenshot and they send you the screenshot and they say, I want to buy this one. Right? So they assume that the way to buy something online is exactly the same as the way they buy in the shop. They walk into a shop and they say, I want to buy this one, right? And somebody will take the item for them, pack it out for them, and tell them how much it costs. And they just walk out of it that way, right? So we are trying to solve all of this, but how? The big question is always how, right? And we're trying to think of it more from like a user experience point of view, right? The best user experience in the world is basically I'm pretty sure a lot of you might have heard of it, which is conversation. You just talk to somebody. tell somebody that you want to buy something and somebody just finds it. But how do you do it at scale? That's the thing. We have close to 200 customer service officers just replying chats 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? So how do you deal with that? I mean, if you're going to 10x your sales, are you going to 10x your customer service officers? That's not possible. You're going to need like a whole building full of them, right? So we're kind of thinking of it more from a technological point of view. We're trying to build like an AI that can understand what they're saying and respond to them. Those things that are easier to respond to, right? And we're trying to incrementally build on that. Our goal ultimately is to build a system where you can buy things directly from them. You can just say, hey, I'm looking for products that are similar to this, right? Could you recommend me something? And the AI will kind of try to figure out, go into the database, figure out, and yeah.
So it would still be high touch, but through a bot.
Through a bot, yeah. Our goal is hopefully they don't realize that it's a bot at all. There's another challenge to Indonesian language. So we're actually building it for Indonesian language, not for English language, right? So we have to kind of start from scratch. Building it for Indonesian language, in Indonesia there's a term called alay-alay, which is basically really strange way of speaking Indonesian.
Colloquial.
Yeah, and different regions they use different terms. And the way they spell it is very differently. So how do you accommodate to all of this? This is the part where it becomes a little bit complex. Yeah.
And how far along are you guys with the AI project?
So we have a beta that works on more than 50% of tags coming out probably by the end of this week. But we're going to do it iteratively. We're not going to kind of deploy it immediately, and our customers, when they chat, they're going to get the AI bot reply. We're going to have to collect more data, right? Meaning the AI will be present, but it will constantly be collecting data, as in try to correct itself. Is the recommendation that the AI is giving correct, or is the recommendation that the AI giving is wrong? If it's wrong, why? So we'll constantly collect more training data so that the system becomes more intelligent. Yeah.
Sure. A lot of startups in this region go to market in neighboring countries, right? So a typical Singaporean, look at Japan, they have just entered Singapore after being in Malaysia as well. Not Singapore, Indonesia, after going to market in Malaysia. What is the most common mistake that you often see foreign companies doing when they're entering an emerging market?
So most companies, when they go into Indonesia, they think that they have the expertise. They think that they are better than the local partners. Right? The basic assumption that a lot of foreign companies have of Indonesian companies is that they are incompetent. Totally wrong. Right? You can come in. Some of the more successful. Okay, I'll just give you a positive example. JD, right? Very successful in China, largest market cap in China. They go to Indonesia, and they should have enough money to do whatever the hell they want to do, right? When they enter Indonesia, they're still doing it on JV, right? They're not doing it alone. They're doing it with joint venture, right? There are a lot of local nuances that foreign companies do not understand at all, especially, for example, management of employees. But you cannot manage employees the same way that as a foreign company is managing employees. Right? Indonesians are very polite. They will never tell you. So for example, if they feel offended with what you do, an example of an employee, if they feel offended with what you do, they will never tell you that, hey, I didn't actually like what you did just now. Right? They will just slow down. They probably, they'll be not as effective, and then they start looking for another job in the middle of the year, after they get the bonuses. Right? And so that happens a lot. Management of employees is one. Another thing is partnership in Indonesia is really over here in Singapore. Partnership is all based on what I can give you and what you can give me. That's it, right? You talk to 5 different partners and you shop around, and who gives you the best deal, you take it. You cannot do that in Indonesia, right? It's very relationship based. Right? People value loyalty a lot. You talk to one company, they are very friendly with you. They've given you quite a bit of things, and as soon as you have an advantage with another company, you switch. Word goes around, and you don't have a chance the next time.
Reputation matters.
Yeah.
Okay, final question for myself before I open up to questions on the floor. If you could do something differently, in hindsight, what would it be?
Could do something different. No, I actually haven't really thought about it because I always think that one thing led to the other. Um,
Consequential.
yeah, consequential. I mean, if you change something, everything else will change as well.
Such a data guy.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, so first question from the floor.
It's a more safe route. You know, I mean, you work for a very large company. Oh, you know, I work for Facebook or Google, right? It feels, you know, and especially when all of your friends are kind of saying that, right? So there's that pressure that you kind of have to constantly fend off.
But you could see that changing. This is one example. You know, you have a startup grind, and you know, risk takers over here.
Maybe, but that wasn't happening when I was there.
Questions? Great.
I'm interested in big data, and one of my questions is how do you actually make sense of data, and how does your data drive the customer experience when they visit your website?
So when it comes to big data is usually like a term that people use to basically just refer to data nowadays. Big data is not as scary as it is. So for us, we always start out with what we want to know first, and then because the main limitation of data is just that you don't have the data to tell you what you want to know, right? So for us, we always kind of figure out, okay, what we want to do with data, and then we work backwards, and we figure out, okay, this is what we want to track, and we do that in very early stage. We kind of think of product in terms like version infinity, right? If we have all the time in the world and all the engineering effort in the world, what are we going to build? And we kind of list them down in terms of priorities, and we start tracking those data right now, and we build models for that, right? In terms of, so that's how we kind of manage to get the data to tell us, to get the necessary data to make decision. Right? In terms of how do we mine and get the data to enhance our customer experience, I think it's dependent, it's company to company. For example, for us, it would be an example of a better customer experience would be recommendation engine. Right? You build better recommender systems so that people, you know, if you have 18,000 products and growing in the platform, if you scroll through 100 products and you don't see products that you like, that's not a very good customer experience, right? So one example would be you build recommendation systems to make sure that customers always get things that they are interested in, products that they like. Right? And so it depends from company to company. I'm not too sure in what context that you're talking about.
I'm thinking about the number of data sources that you consolidate and how you make sense of that data and translate it into any activities or any changes to your website.
Always start off with a goal. What do you want to do? Right? I mean, what do you plan to achieve? When you say you want to improve customer service, customer experience, how? How do you plan? And then work backwards. Because people always say we want to track everything, right? I mean, every company says, you know, we want to be a data-driven company. We want to track everything. But what are you going to track, right? I mean, that's always the question. And some people say, okay, we just put everything in a log. You put things in logs, you will never look at it. You have maybe terabytes of logs kept somewhere. You never look at it. So at least for us, right? I'm not sure, you know, if you work on your side, we always start from what do you plan to do, or how do you plan to improve customer experience? You can think as big as you want and figure out how to get there. I hope it makes sense. Yeah.
So you've been involved with 2 early stage startups. What are your thoughts on some of the successful growth strategies that you've used in the startups?
So from the outside, startups always look like they have a very natural growth, right? They always look like, man, this startup is meant to be a superstar, you know. Don't believe all the news that you read, man. Those are all rubbish, right? Because a lot of these startups, you know, you have to think, okay, startups, you start pre-seed, and then now you raise seed, right? Now you raise seed, you need to raise A. But how are you going to raise A? You have to kind of keep that up and to the right curve, right? The up and to the right curve doesn't happen organically, right? right? There's always like a bunch of digital marketing involved, and you have to control your costs and all of these things, right? At the end of the day, it's all execution. It's literally just execution. Just okay, you have this much on a budget to do marketing. You have to keep up, for example, X amount of month-to-month growth. How are you gonna do that while at the same time keeping within your budget? Right? Are you gonna spend all in digital marketing? How are you gonna optimize digital marketing from there? Right? It's all basically just that. It's not anything interesting at all from a growth perspective, from a startup in the early stage growth perspective. Yeah, am I on track? Okay.
What are the common mistakes that you see teams who are focused on building audience? Starting with early stage. What are the common mistakes that you see?
The most common one I've seen is retention so far. Right? You focus so much on the top of the funnel to drive a lot of traffic. And initially, in the very early stage, when let's say you have only 100 customers to grow from 100 to 150, 50% month-to-month growth, that is easy, right? But how do you keep that up? How do you keep that up 1.5 years later, 1 year later, right? So most startups, because it's so easy to grow, they're like, oh my god, we just have to invest another $1,000 and we get this much amount of growth. Let's do that. Let's do more of that. Let's do more of that. And you ignore retention, right? Because you're leaking slower than the amount you're adding. You will reach a point where you have kind of exhausted that whole growth channel, right? And now you're like, okay, we have a problem maintaining growth. We have a big problem. Then you look at your retention and you realize that your retention is horrible. And you have lost all of these customers. They're never coming back, right? So then that's when you panic. That's when your graph starts to taper off. And coincidentally, for almost every startup, when the graph starts to taper off, that's when your money starts to run out as well, right? And now you need to raise money, and you need to talk to investors, and your graph doesn't look very good. You're not in a very good place, right? And I think that's what I see a lot happening.
So basically, when you're talking about growth now, where would you see the company going in the next 3 years? Do you plan to maybe target a different market, or would you want to add more verticals and break out of just doing the specific product range that you're doing and then add more verticals in terms of products that are available on the site?
I think in terms of region-wise, we want to focus on Indonesia, right? It's large enough, and expanding to another country will kind of break our focus, right? It's a total different market altogether. The behavior of the customer is very different. We have to start from scratch. We're just going to focus on Indonesia in terms of region, but in terms of categorical expansion, we're kind of talking about it as well. But there are a bunch of things that we want to figure out. So we are a hybrid model, right? We source from suppliers and we also manufacture some of it as well. So there's a bunch of balancing act that we want to do. Categorical expansion, we are considering some of it. So I can't actually expand too much on it. Yeah.
So my question is around sharing. How do you so data people know a lot about everything, right? In terms of as they dig into it, they learn a lot about labor-centric areas. Question number one is how do you get this knowledge spread around your entire company? Because it's important for people who know the key trends. And number two, how do you empower everyone else in the company to be equally data-driven?
Okay. So we have a couple of efforts that we are doing. I mean, and most of it we have done since day one. We have a platform that can allow anybody with access to query data. Essentially, they can get the information that they want if they want to get the data. And most departments, they query the data themselves. So how do they get the knowledge of what database we have? Right? We have over 1 terabytes of data now. How do we get the knowledge? Mostly through training. So they will have sent a few people from each division to the business intelligence team, and we kind of train them for a week or two, right? And then now they kind of understand what data is available, where are they stored, what can the data do, what can the data figure out, what we need, what else do we need if we want to figure out some of the things they want to figure out. And then they go back to the divisions and they kind of spread the word around. And they'll kind of be the point person to get the information they need. That's sort of like to build a data-driven culture, right? So everybody gets access to data, and nobody comes up with opinions without data backing, right? For example, people will say, I think, an example would be the categorical expansion, right? nobody can actually come up to us to say and say, okay, we gotta expand to baby products, right? If you ask them why and they don't have something to back it up, that's the end of the conversation, right? Because we are kind of ruthlessly like that, the company kind of adapts to it, and it, most of the time conversations will revolve around numbers. Speaking on the business intelligence people, the data people, they're the most pessimistic. I think the business intelligence division are the most pessimistic people in the company, because you always look at data number all the time, and you always try to figure out what's wrong, because you want to figure out how to improve the company. Right? These people are the most pessimistic people in the company. So one of the things that I'm trying to manage is that how do you make sure that this pessimism doesn't rub off to the other team when the other team comes in to be trained. Right? I'm still trying to figure out how to do that. Yeah.
Is marketing led by a technical person at SalesTop?
No. Okay. But the marketing division, 70% of the marketing division people are engineers. Because, I've worked with a lot of marketing people that are just, I think, this color doesn't pop, can you make it brighter? What does it mean, right? So that's not really a culture that we want. So we built a marketing team that's very strong in terms of analytical, very technical. But they, of course, they're doing more of a marketing growth stuff. Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about your technology stack?
So you mean technology stack in data? Yeah. So I mean it's just the very common stuff. We don't use any strange things. So everything is stored in Hadoop, right? And of course if we need to process anything, you process in Spark. We do a lot of pre-computation to reduce the amount of time you query every time you get the data. Right? For example, if you need daily data, you pre-compute daily data into their own table. When you get when you want to get that data you don't get from raw data anymore, you get from pre-computation, right? So mostly just very common stack that most people use.
So is there any IP related to the proprietary stuff that you build around your technology stack so far?
So proprietary tech that we built around data.
Yeah.
So proprietary stuff are usually more on the data science stuff, which is more on the recommender system, the NLP things that we're doing. We're also experimenting with some of the image recognition projects. Our search algorithms. So these are, of course, we won't kind of share with everybody. But for our data infrastructure stack, it's very open source.
And is the data related work on the technical side all operational and all growth related, or is it like something that you're doing in a perspective that okay, this thing we're doing is not going to give us some benefits in the next 3 to 6 months, but really 1 year later, we are investing this much into R&D for this year, being a high-growth startup, and 1 year later, I think we can build this product and we can have it as an option or something like that.
It's a bit of both. So if you look at recommender systems, the main goal is of course to increase conversion and to increase basket size, right? That's essentially to something that will hit the bottom line immediately. So if you look at search, it's the same thing, right? You want to make sure that conversion is really high. Projects like that hits the bottom line immediately, and of course we do A/B testing on it all the time, try to figure out which model works better. But the more long-term projects are things like where we're kind of thinking how SalesTop will be in the next couple of years, and this will be things like the NLP projects that we're trying to do. Right? So we are working on both. Yeah.
Just a personal question. What do you personally look for when you're looking for a junior data analyst? Is it quantitative, qualitative, academic? What skills do they need to possess, and where do you look for them?
So when you mention data analyst, do you mean like the business intelligence analyst or the data scientist?
Maybe the data scientists, so small technical side of things.
Data science people, we look for people who are very strong mathematically, which means that basically they can read, for example, research papers written by, for example, Google. Maybe Google did an NLP project, right? And they publish a paper and say, okay, here's what we have found. And they can actually read through it, and they can read the algos, and they're very comfortable with it. And they can, it can actually bring them, it can actually give them a sort of idea, okay, this is how it works. I kind of have an idea of how it works for internship, right? And
Do they need to have a background in math, PhD, or quant related?
most of them have very strong background in mathematics, but in my team we don't actually look at the degrees very much, as long as you have the ability to, as for data science, you have the ability to read research papers, to understand, to have a conversation with other data scientists on what is the best method, right? How do you optimize an algo, for example, right? We're fine with that. But most of them, so far, very strong mathematical background.
Just one more. Was it easy to find a data analyst nowadays? It seems like a new role that's been created, in the last decade or so. So,
not that. I mean, somebody who is independent enough, who can. Okay, let me try to kind of go back later. So a lot of the fresh graduates, like with math background, they're very good at mathematics, right? And technically they can do the job, but they don't have the ability to power through a project. For example, if you've done a search project with them and you say, hey, we have existing techniques like that, we want to optimize this one, right? You kind of sit through that and they'll be like, oh, right? And they just blank out, right? What we are looking for is somebody who can start researching, right? Read research papers and can come back, here's my idea, what do you think? And then somebody who can debate with you, right? And these people are not that easy to find. Yeah.
So what are some of the ways you go about looking for them?
So a lot of it, we have our in-house recruiter, of course, but we're also looking for people who are very strong in mathematics, young, and very, very trainable, right? Somebody who is generally very excited about something. So there are two kinds of fresh graduates. One is those kind where they just sit there, they're gonna be stuck. When they're stuck, they go into like a depression, right? They think that, okay, I can't do the job, I'm gonna have a very bad performance review, all of this problem. And when you catch up with them and you're like, oh, are you doing okay? And then they will be too afraid to tell you that they don't know where to start. Right. We're looking for more of the people who are generally very excited. You just come in and say, oh, you want me to do this? Sure. Okay. Then they just go read some random article. They can even Google search, how do I optimize search, for example. And then it will lead them to researches that have been done, right? Multiple researches that have been done. And they'll come back with a pretty constructed, pretty well thought out execution plan. Okay, we're going to do this. Most of it will not be perfect. Right? You look at it and you're like, okay, we have done this, this one doesn't work, that one doesn't fit our business model. But you start a conversation, right? And you can go back and you just kind of improve over that. And a good data scientist, a good fresh graduate, very strong in mathematics, they can learn to be a pretty decent data scientist in a month. It's not a problem. Yeah.
So a lot of e-commerce companies have started taking a very mobile-only kind of strategy, mobile app-only. Do you see that happening in Indonesia, and what's sales talks?
That's what sales talks do. Yeah, we just, like, if you go to the site, it looks like an Instagram feed, and if you go to the site on your laptop, it would just be still an Instagram feed, because the majority of our customers are mobile. And again, that's back to how Indonesia is like, right? Majority of Indonesians are outside of cities. And majority of Indonesians, because they're outside of cities, they don't have the spending power to buy a laptop. The first computer will be the phone. And that's, they are most familiar with the phone.
So you will not have a desktop strategy at all, or are you supporting both right now?
At the moment, no. We're just going to be completely mobile. And basically, our traffic is majority mobile as well. So we don't think it's a valid investment to invest in building a desktop site.
What about network reliability?
Oh yeah, and another issue in Indonesia is that now you have everybody outside in rural areas, they use like crappy Android phones, right? And they're only on crappy Android phones. Their internet connection is also horrible, right? Really, really bad internet connection, and a lot of them, they only subscribe to data, right? So now they don't even have call plans. They only subscribe to data. And some of them, they only subscribe to specific data, like for example, Facebook, Line, WhatsApp. They can't use anything else, but they can use a few of them. Right? So challenges will be not just desktop versus mobile. It's just desktop. It's just mobile. And how do you reach out to all these fragmented people within mobile? People who can open your site, people who download your app, who are a bit tech savvy, who can download your app, and the other people who doesn't even know internet exists when they are using Line, Facebook, and WhatsApp every single day. Right? There's a I think, I don't know if you guys have read it, there was a research that was done, I forgot by who, 50% of the Indonesians when asked, do you use internet, they say no, but do you use Facebook, they say yes. Right? So they don't know the existence of internet.
Last question, right?
Yeah, we'll take one last question.
So do you, currently the way your logistics are planned, how quickly does a customer get a delivery of a product?
Yeah, that's a major problem. So in Jakarta and Greater Jakarta, it's not a problem at all.
Right. What would be your lead time for the city?
1 to 2 days. Jakarta and the Greater Jakarta is 1 to 2 days to get the item. It's not a problem. But once you go to the outskirts areas, it could take a week.
Okay.
Right? It could take a little bit more than a week.
And do you work on a centralized warehousing system, or is it more you work on, are you looking to maybe expand to different logistics centers based on purchasing trends and then forecasting that these are the kinds of products that are being bought in these outskirts of these cities, so we should stock up on these so that we can then Gojek and send something out in 2 hours?
Yeah, even Gojek is only available in cities. Right. So we have plans to do that. We have plans to kind of have multiple warehouses, but I don't think it's that soon, right? Because we work with a sister company of ours, logistic partners, to kind of handle most of the work. And we're still working out of a centralized warehouse.
Thank you very much everyone for attending, and Thomas will stick around for a couple of drinks. Please feel free to keep networking. We'll have some pizzas over there and some drinks. Thank you. Son, you have a few words?
Thanks a lot for coming to share with us. It's a very fantastic experience. I have a small token. Thank you. Everyone, thanks for coming. Our next month event will be on 23rd March. We cover with other speaker who is the CTO of Grand, which is eCommerce startup. It's involved. So do come by next month. Thank you, and do hang around. Just have some drinks.